Facebook, YouTube. Ethan here at Piano Tech Radio Hour from Piano Technicians Masterclasses. Here with Ben Roque. Is that how you say it?
Roki?
Roque. And we're about to begin the program. We'll do a little intro here, but we're just letting people into the Zoom room as I speak. Hello, everyone in the Zoom. Thanks for joining us. So we've got a handful of folks that are in our live studio audience here. Glad to have you guys join us. We're already streaming out there on Facebook and YouTube. About to get started. I'll give the intro to the program and we'll dive into a wonderful conversation with our guest, Ben. Let's see here. We have some more people popping in. Wonderful to see such a good turnout. Hey guys. Hey guys. Great to have you here. All right. Well, everybody's getting settled. Looks like there might be a few other people that jump in. We'll let them in as things proceed. But I'm going to give an intro to the program so you know what's going on and we can get rolling. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Radio Hour for just $16 a month and get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as all the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in a member area. Join using the link bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. Of course, we have also want to remind you guys about the podcast, the audio-only versions of this show, which are great for listening in the shop or in the car, doing the dishes, working out, whatever suits you for your podcast listening pleasure. And we're popular all over the world. We've reached top 100 status, top 10 status, top #1 status, even in some locales in the performing arts category on iTunes. Very proud to say, all over the world. And in addition, I want you to check out the Substack, which is our blog. Gives you some basic insights into some of the content that you'll see in the masterclasses member area. And if you like it, then you can dive a little bit deeper and get yourself a subscription. And of course, find us on the social medias, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're on all those places. And last but not least, subscribe to the newsletter at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. It's right there. You'll get updates on each week's new program for the radio hour and everything that's going on. Definitely worth having a subscription there. So without further ado, I will introduce today's esteemed guest, Ben Roque. Did I get it right this time?
Roki.
Roque.
I'll
Ben Roque.
answer any
Yeah.
number of pronunciations.
Ben is the powerhouse behind Little Valley in Vermont, Little Valley Piano, blending rural resourcefulness with top-tier piano expertise. A factory-trained technician with credentials from Steinway and Sons, Mason and Hamlin. Ben specializes in everything from grand rebuilds to prepping pianos for festivals and universities. As the new owner of Grandwork Tools, he's redefining regulation and setup practices while sharing his knowledge to uplift the entire field. Join us today here for a conversation on innovation, small business, and the art of piano tech. Benjamin, welcome to the program. Great to see you again.
Same to you. It's good to be here.
And you are, we have discovered you are stepping out of a very special piano technicians guild meeting locally, day-long thing. So we appreciate you taking the time to spend it with us as well.
Yeah, we're such a rural location that people are traveling sometimes 3 hours to come to a PTG meeting. And so how do you get better attendance? Well, we're trying 4 classes in one day. So
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually. Good thinking. Good thinking. Yeah, make it a whole seminar. Sounds good. Well, I think it's gonna be fun to talk to you. I mean, this what I love about this program is I get to do whatever I want. So I often, just kind of go off the rails on whatever topic suits me. And of course, I'm very affiliative with anybody that's entrepreneurial, which you have been in the industry. We're all, a bit of entrepreneurs ourselves as piano technicians, but You're taking on this project of Chris Brown's business, and we're going to touch upon that today. Of course, if anybody in the audience has any questions as well, or concerns, I mean, we didn't say if you have concerns, but if you have
We like
concerns,
we like feedback.
we'll ignore you. But anyways, yeah, we can talk about any of this stuff. But I guess I'm just going to launch into that topic right away because I think it's probably one of the most fun to talk about, most interesting to talk about. So how long has it been since you've officially been the new proprietor of Grandworks Tools?
So it was the end of January, so a little under six months.
Okay. Yeah,
Under five, I
congratulations.
guess. About five.
Congratulations. And um help set me up here geographically because Chris is in Boston, right?
Near
Boston area,
Boston. Yep.
near Boston, and you're in Vermont,
Right.
which are not next door. So, did this entail like taking a truck down to his shop and bringing a bunch of supplies, or how did
Very
that?
much did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a truck and a trailer and um quite a long time spent packing up not only inventory, but stacks of boxes large enough to ship the regulation stations in. And um, it was it was an exhausting day.
Okay. Only one day though. There you
Yeah,
go.
one day.
Just brings
Well,
you back to moving into the college dorm, I guess.
and then another day unloading.
Um, and uh, and I forget, you have purchased other businesses or you developed relationships with other technicians where you're kind of taking on whatever they're leaving off, right?
Right. I actually started part-time in Connecticut practically by accident.
Okay.
And um, so there was a um, when I moved to Vermont, I had a number of personal reasons for wanting to live in Vermont, and a colleague there knew about it, and so one day I got a call from him saying, "Do I want to come take over the business?" So it is actually my second time.
Mm. I'm gonna I am recording somewhere, but I want to make sure I'm recording here. So you might hear the recording thing go here. There we go. So just a backup. Um, I guess I don't, we're not trying to get any trade secrets or inside information here. So any of these questions would be like, oh, well, we're going a little bit too deep. So that's totally fine, right? But
Okay.
I am curious, so I'll ask questions and then you can just set the boundaries.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I guess, have you heard of other comparative situations where somebody's taken on business? There's been folks who've been acquired, like we've had the piano book, the Larry Fine's business, right? It's been acquired in the past several years. We had the tool makers uh pianoforte supply, right?
The Irwins,
Yeah, there's been, and then of course there's the big one
Piano
of
Tech.
Shaft and Piano Tech, right? Been a handful of these going on. I don't know if as you're kind of in this sort of domain, you're hearing about what the transition processes are like, right? I'm sure it's different for everything. And with Chris, you have a very personalized, I guess, business in and of itself. But in terms of transition process, um, is there a lot of involvement with Chris, or he's like, here's the stuff, go make something of yourself. How's it going?
Yeah, I've tried to not involve him more than I have to. And in part that's out of respect for his time because
Hmm.
it's not paid time.
Hmm.
Um, when I've needed to reach out, he's been very responsive. Um, and I get the sense that he's probably uh, I mean, I'm sure he's interested in seeing it succeed. And yeah, so I guess I'm grateful for everything that he does, uh, provide advice wise and instruction
Hmm.
wise, and hoping to not abuse it at the same time.
Very kind. Yes. Yeah, that can happen. Um, how about your approach? Do you feel that you percentage wise, I guess, of okay, here's some things that are working percentage wise, 40%, 80%, 15, whatever. I'm gonna just keep doing these things and just make sure I do them kind of how Chris did them. Versus, okay, this is my thing now, and this is a great time to make a transition, do something different, and I want to do these things. Um, any thoughts on apportioning that or, just going into specifics?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of I, the vast majority of it is pretty mature as far as products go. Um, so there is probably very little about the existing products that I'm looking to change. Um, there are definitely um, a few things that I would like to make easier or faster. It tends to, at least as I'm thinking about it now, it tends to be more new tools um, as opposed to changing tools. And I could just give a couple examples right now. Um, the for anyone who might not know, what we're talking about is it's called the regulation station, and it's a table that basically mimics the way the action sits in the piano. So you can easily move an action between the piano and the regulation station, and the regulation is staying consistent between the two. So it has a key bed that with platforms that you raise and lower, and then it has templates that simulate the string locations. And um, and so those templates that are simulating the string locations easily adjust between where the string is, where let off, is determined to be, where blow distance is determined to be. But with back checking, there's no way to really put a template right where the hammer should be after when it's caught by the back checks, because you need those templates there for it to bounce off as the strings. Um, Anything that's going to be in the position of the back check is going to prevent the um, prevent the hammer from lifting, to the point of the strings. And so the way it's done currently is you can just hold a gauge in your hand and play the key and then insert the gauge between the hammer and the strings. And it's kind of a pass fail. You can raise or lower the checking and try again. And I'm in the stage of drawing ideas to basically hold a laser at the point where the hammers would be caught by the back check. And so you can play the note, hammer bounces off the template where the string is, gets caught by the back check, and if the laser is just grazing the crown of the hammer, then it's set up correctly. Whereas if the laser is shining on the side of the hammer, then it's checking is too high, or if it's missing the
Hmm.
hammer altogether, checking is too low. And so it takes a tool out of your hand and potentially speeds up the process.
When in doubt, add lasers. I mean, it's the it's the 21st century, right? So,
When I in the week after taking over the business, I um, put in an announcement on Facebook and just really solicited um, input. Like
okay,
here's a chance for us to
right,
rethink things. Give me your ideas. What do you and lasers was hit pretty hard, so it
okay, nice.
definitely got me thinking.
Lasers and AI. I mean, see if you can do some AI, then you're good. And crypto.
Hopefully not.
There's some crypto in there. There's some tokens for when you get things regulated properly. Um, yeah, so okay, that's great. So you're trying to, innovate in some ways, but also, keep things the same. Um, I think what is a nice thing about the product is you are And at some point, I mean, a lot of people are aware of this, and you were trying to sort of explain it. We can go to the website or something and show some things.
Right.
That's not off limits. But so yeah, I think you're passing on a good reputation. You know, you've got the great testimonials from icons in the industry all over the website and stuff like that, and a buzz around the product. Um, is there anything around marketing or anything that feels like it needs to be changed or adapted, or is it just kind of again stay the course?
Yes, I very much intend to um, make some changes around marketing. Um, from things as simple as the ad in the PTG journal, which I think right now is focused on just kind of continually putting the name in front of people's faces.
Hmm.
But that regulating rack, I think there's a strong case to be made that it is the best in the world. And whether you're using the full regulation station or not,
Hmm.
it potentially is just an enormous time saver. I mean, it's useful if you're regulating a piano action on your workbench.
Hmm.
And so I would love to take some of those ads and actually start trying to make the case that some of these products are um, fairly transformative, and also presenting some of the use cases that people might not think of all the time. Most of us are um, lone wolves, so to speak. Um, but I've had users tell me about how um, they can complete a full regulation on an action without scheduling any extra time in their team schedules because the action is sitting there set up on the regulation station in the shop. And when they have a spare 45 minutes at the end of the day, they do one step in the regulation. And so it's use cases that not everyone is going to be familiar with or have thought of. And um,
Hmm.
I'd like to help people think more outside of the box about how it
Yeah,
can be useful.
that sounds great. Um, and then and so give us also like an overview of all the different things that you're managing right now. So you have just a tuning, regular tuning business. You do some rebuilding, right?
Some rebuilding, um, I would say pretty heavy in action rebuilding and aspiring belly rebuilding. Um, we move pianos this time of year, very busy getting summer camps and music festivals up and running. Um, and then I would say I have a dream or a vision of developing some online courses, maybe both for technicians and pianists. Um, I find it very easy to spread myself thin. Uh, it's very easy for me to be interested in a lot of things, and
I hear
um,
that.
and definitely a challenge to, you spread yourself too thin, you start not being good at everything. And
I mean,
so
listen, there's people. Okay, who's that? Do you use AI at all? Are you an AI
a little bit,
person? A little bit.
dabbled.
I mean, I'm in a lot of different domains, myself, so I can empathize. And so, I spend time in the sciences. I was spending time with the folks who went on to work for DeepMind and Google,
Okay.
10 years ago, right before
Uh-huh.
things started. breaking or whatever. Um, so I've been fascinated with it. And recently I asked the AI, you know what, just go throughout all of history, all of history, and culture, and throughout different countries and epochs and all this stuff. And tell me some patterns, what it means to both live a good life as a normal person, just your regular citizen, and also like the greats, And it was interesting. It did come out with a lot of um, accomplished personalities historically were polymathic, meaning, in multiple domains, and it gave examples like everything from Benjamin Franklin. I feel like a Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
It's like he founded a country. He also, made newspapers and invented, you know, you know, harness electricity, all these crazy things, right? Um, or even, folks you might not as think of as often, like Isaac Newton, and he was into more than physics, right? So there's a case to be made for it being okay.
And that's interesting. Yeah.
There's a lot of jack of all trades, master of none speak, but when you go deep enough, I think it's a good sign, and it can be compounding, right? If you, I think that's where things get interesting. For example, the folks that learn, if you know one or two languages, cool, but once you know three or four languages, now it's like easier for you to learn any language. So it's almost goes without saying that you're going to speak, 10 different languages because you
Uh,
kind of can pick them up because you know about languages in general.
sure.
So yeah, but yeah, that sounds like a fun objective. I mean, the industry, is in some ways craving educational opportunities and practical opportunities. I mean, we focused a lot on online, resources and trying to leverage, that global impact. But some people, I've had conversations with people that just would really love an opportunity to tune tune 20 pianos a week for 3 months, just for the learning opportunity,
Hmm.
because it's like they want to get better. They don't want to go practice on people's pianos. They want to practice. They want a little bit of guidance, but they don't need a ton. And they would just die at the chance to just tune piano. If you give me the pianos, I'll tune them for a few weeks and get my chops down. So lots of little opportunities like that, that I think people are craving. So keep in touch about it.
Yes. Good.
Um, what when you do the action rebuilding, what kind of how many projects? So I guess I'll go back to, I think you have some people that you work with on a team, or is this kind of solo operation?
One full-time shop technician um, started from maybe a year and a half experience with another technician, um, and then a big break between the two. And I was really at the point where I was ready to not be working alone again. Part of it was that, and part of it was um, I would put in a plug for the book E-Myth. I'm sure you're
Aware of
familiar
it,
with
yeah.
that.
Good book.
Um, and I will say that after I read that, I took it to my wife and said, You have to read like the first three chapters of this because you will understand me better." And, um, for those who haven't read it, um, it's a description of why businesses fail when they're started by technicians, not
In
necessarily
any
piano
domain.
technicians,
Yeah, in
but
any
yeah,
domain.
and how the entrepreneur uh, aspect and the managerial aspect kind of need to be there from the start. And um, I feel like I'm half in that destined to fail technician driven business and half like trying to claw my way into the real thing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But some of us on the call may have this experience, some not, but it's worth talking about. I mean, um, yeah, when you start as a piano technician, it really depends on your personality, how much it it's treated as a business, right? And that doesn't mean it's not a lucrative thing.
Mhm.
It's just it's kind of you've got your solopreneur category, which is a little bit different than the entrepreneur. In a lot of cases, the typical piano technician is running it almost like a freelancer would, who's like, designs websites or does whatever, they take the work when it comes and, try to get a little bit more and, do everything, like you said, do everything themselves, and that can work. But correctly, um, for it to be defined as a business or entrepreneurial endeavor among typical entrepreneurs, you've got to be able to, well, a good definer is be able to sell it, for example, and have
Yeah.
it keep working without you, right?
Yeah.
Have some value that's generated whether you're there or not. um, which, when you think about the typical piano tuner's entry point, it's a big chasm because it's all just working because you're going to tune those pianos. If you stop, what happens? Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, you have the client lists and things like that. But yes. Um, so yeah. But I was one of the points I wanted to make, though, which maybe you've thought of, is, and it's come from me as I explore these things, is ultimately, though, it's a good task to take on, but it's also sometimes difficult to figure out. You want to, you have the opportunity to figure out what you want to do within the business, right? So if you enjoy getting your hands dirty and
Hmm.
rebuilding the pianos, that's totally fine. But if you can orchestrate the business so you get to do that instead of having to do that, for example, that's the goal, right?
Yeah. Have yeah, control the business instead of the business controlling you.
Sure, sure. Um, well, that's fun. That's fun to hear you getting into those things as well. Um, how do you think about yeah, as you dream and vision on that, you said you may be thinking about doing some educational stuff or whatever. Any other thoughts and plans about, being more entrepreneurial about it, bringing on other staff people or resources or automated systems or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably a weakness on my part is um, you know, you, I would love to say reduce my tuning schedule to 2 days a week and have time really to set aside for developing a tool, developing the marketing strategy, working on a course, doing some of the rebuilding work, which could be really interesting. And a lot of those things um, are investments. They don't pay off immediately. And so it always feels like if you stop working to do them, well, how do you pay the bills from now until when they start paying off? And I- yeah, I'm not sure if I mentioned already, and you were asking kind of the number of fires that I had in iron, number of irons that I had in the fire, and selling pianos would be an additional one
Okay.
one
Right.
there.
Do you have a storefront or like a showroom at least?
Yeah, we actually had a barn burned down a year and a half ago, and the insurance money from that, um, I learned that insurance doesn't necessarily make you whole. It definitely stops it from being catastrophic.
Hmm.
But it, it doesn't, in fact, maybe very likely does not make you whole. uh, and still kind of look at that and take the lemons and make lemonade. And that insurance money was the seed for a new building that will be our showroom and some additional shop space. That probably would have never happened without that fire. Um, so I think I maybe got sidetracked a little bit there. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, they were just asking about the plan, yeah, the plans, I guess, in sort of the directions you're thinking of taking things. So, it sounds like the new showroom and taking that opportunity and spinning it in the right direction. It reminds me of I think it was Jim Wilson. I think it was. Yeah, Jim Wilson, the guest that we had. You familiar with Jim? He's the guy that wrote the
I'm not.
autobiography. Yeah, he wrote an autobiography, which you might as well check out. It's like one of those goes into the piano technician's library kind of a thing. So
Sure.
he's from Texas. He learned how to become a piano technician, moved to LA to seek his fortune as a musician, started tuning for local, celebrity musicians and his life took off from there in fascinating directions. He got back into music, started playing again. And, but he was one of the first guys that would install the MIDI mods, when they first started doing MIDI, where you could play the keyboard and other sounds would come out.
Hmm.
Um, and he was basically the first guy who could do that. So then they would send him all the way around the world, and he'd work with Elton John, and he had spent a few days with them because you have to install these things, and he'd be hanging out with Paul McCartney, whatever. Um, so, anyways, when he was a kid, uh, he accidentally burned a barn down. And in the book, it's like a pivotal moment. It's like, it's his dad's barn, and his dad had this whole, dream of trying to make XYZ work, and his stupid kid, burned the barn down. Um, so, anyways, reminds me
Wow.
of that. I don't know how yours happened, but yeah, guess it happens to the best of us. Um, so, but there weren't any pianos in it. You weren't using
No,
it for piano.
it was not the shop. So it
Yeah.
was actually a heat lamp on chicks.
Okay, great. Um, well, as someone who's trying to maybe thinking a little bit on a higher level or meta level on the industry, where do you think things are going here? We the latest I'm hearing, it's like, okay, so well, China, the market's okay for pianos. The United States is not necessarily picking up. What I'm hearing is there are different strategies that are working and not working. For example, like I know talk to some guys who, they would place the I could say all this because I don't have any relationships with any piano brands or anything. They'd have the relationship with, like, I think, Yamaha or Kawara, and they place the instruments on their showroom, and they had, I don't know the details. So they have these weird relationships where it's almost like you're almost like paying to like have their piano in your showroom, and they don't sell. The newer, you got the big, $100,000 instrument out there, and everybody just looks at it, and then they end up buying something else. And in one particular case, they said we just stopped doing that entirely. We find nice instruments that actually don't even need rebuilding. Just a little bit of tweak, like as little as possible. We
Mhm.
we spend all our time getting those and getting them for good prices, and that's our business model, and that makes us money. They figured it out, right? And that was a model that works. And there's others, right? But it's definitely not the same. It's not the same as, oh, we're a Yamaha dealer and Yamaha's going to take care of us and help us sell the pianos. I don't know if that ever actually worked, but but yeah, how do you see the industry in general, whether it's about selling pianos or new technicians? I'm also hearing, I think there was an actual, okay, bud, no questions. uh, um, I told him not to bug me. I don't know what, but anyways, what was I gonna say? Uh, Oh, there was even an article. People were sending me an article in Australia. There's a shortage of piano technicians, or there's shortages of technicians, or I saw an ad, PTG, for a technician at Indiana University, and they're going to be paid pretty handsomely. Like I'm hundred over $100,000 salary. gig, being a piano technician at a university. So there's definitely space for it. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Have you noticed any trends or projections?
I mean, my my sense of it is that the the use of the acoustic piano is declining, and the number of people who take care of them is declining faster. Um, so I am certainly not seeing, any shortage of work servicing pianos. Um, I mean, the question of which pianos to sell is an incredibly good question. Um, with Mason and Hamlin, we have a couple of that very expensive class of pianos sitting there. We've had them um, less than a year, and um, gotten a small amount of interest in them, and not sold one to date. I was actually just talking with another technician who sold Shigeru Kawai, and he said he thought they sold a total of 11 over maybe double that number of years. So they are definitely um, not something that sells rapidly. And I should say, again, it's a very rural market here. So I have a pretty large territory covering Burlington, Vermont, and Albany, New York. So there's definitely a size of a population size that should be big enough to make some sales. And the real challenge is, if 1% of the population can afford it, and 1% of that is interested in spending that much money on a piano, how do you find them? And um, how do you get them to realize that just the gravity of the name Steinway? I would not say anything against Steinway. We service hundreds upon hundreds of Steinways, and in general, I really like those pianos, and especially the new ones. But um, I think there are arguments to be made for other brands. Everything from um, they are quality pianos as well, and do we really want a monolith? Do we want the tonal palette that's available to just be the same, all the way to, there are design differences, and um, objective reasons why you might think one design is better or another. At the price point, you would have, if someone said, I want to buy a 6 foot piano, should it be a 6 foot Steinway or a 6 foot Mason and Hamlin? Well, go back and forth and find the one that you like. If you said, I have $100,000 to spend on a piano, it could be $100,000 Steinway or $100,000 Mason. You might very well get a larger Mason that makes a substantial difference in what you get as a piano. So I guess that was a bit of a tangent to get back to the question. It's going to be the challenge is finding the 1% of 1%, and um, and then making that case to have an open mind.
Yeah.
I really don't feel. I mean, I don't. It wouldn't be intellectually honest for me to say Mason and Hamlin is the world's best piano and you should like it's for everyone. But I do believe it is right up there and it is the piano for for enough people.
Yeah. I mean, it is pretty impressive. The the legacy of the Steinway name, and what it carries. And um, I do think that uh, there's been places that I've seen, to be diplomatic about it, right, where I often feel like, whew, they're running on fumes on that name. You know what I mean? It's like, could maybe we could actually do a little bit more as a brand to actually live up to the name,
Mhm.
and that, it just um or well, that works. It's just, I guess it's amazing how much you can go on a name. You can charge a premium, on a name, as long as you can maintain that status of the name, then you can charge the premium for the name. But yeah, I think one of the most common things I've started to hear more and more is they do less and less. It's like they ship you the piano and it doesn't quite work or something, and then you're like, oh hey, you sold me a piano, it doesn't work. Like, yeah, well, that's because you have to have somebody set it up for you. You know, oh, this part's not okay, we'll charge you to change that out, it's like, wow. Um, so uh, but yeah, other than that, also, yeah, there's this other tonal palettes and other domains that are very interesting. Like you said, Mason and Hamlin's, or there are. I do hear more often people say that their dream piano is it's usually they say the Imperial Bosendorfer.
Uh-huh.
Maybe that's also branding, like the idea of something being imperial. I don't know, but the Bosendorf Imperial is definitely a fantasy piano for lots. I think um uh I can't think of the Italian maker. Why I can't think of it.
Fazioli.
Fazioli. Fazioli. Uh I feel like people more like the concept and the name of Fazioli. They don't like, that's not like a particular piano, like, oh, I need to have the Imperial or this version or whatever, but they just have a certain respect for that. And also the tone of it, I think people find that they find it different and they like it.
Mhm.
Um, and of course David Clavin's a very interesting left fielder.
Yes.
Um, and I've been actually helping him import some of his pianos into the States.
The
And
Unicorda. Yes.
Unicordas,
Yeah,
very cool
it is.
little instruments. Yes. Um, but yeah, I mean, hopefully, right? I mean, I think we are moving into an era, just generally. My philosophy is, or my theory is, right? We had an era probably from last beginning of last century to mid-century and bleeding into the end of last century of what's the mean, and let's use that statistic as a fellow scientist. uh, Use the statistic of the mean to inform how we're going to create products and services and even government or whatever. So it's like, okay, what's the average height of a man? All right, well, let's make sure we have clothes that fit the average man, and we'll sell more that way. And to hell with the other people, because if we don't serve the average person, then we won't make as much money, right? So we went through this era where it was about being normal and serving the normal person and directing everything in that direction. And increasingly, it seems that we're moving in towards customization, right? It's like you're on YouTube or Amazon or whatever, and Netflix, everything's geared towards exactly you specifically. So maybe there's room for, um, just a bit more bespoke approach again to
Mhm.
instruments, pianos. Maybe we can awaken that, and it's starting to awaken in the population. What do you think? Did I sell it to you?
It sounds great to me. Yeah, I do
You're like,
think,
but find me the buyer so I can get paid.
even in the service area, we've found success in full service or full-ish service.
Hmm.
taking care of the whole piano. And um, I think um, there is a certain segment that just really needs a piano as inexpensively as possible. And and the fact that we've taken the 30-year-old piano and replaced the key bushings and regulated it and voiced it and installed a damp chaser system. They actually just wanted it before all that at a lower price point.
Sure.
Um, and so I feel my experience has been that in the service market, there is plenty of demand for the higher end.
Hmm.
Um, my I know my piano's been neglected and I'm ready to get it caught up. And in the piano sales market, I I feel like there's a lot of price pressure on buyers.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, agreed. I think people will pay just as much to have their piano cleaned as they will to have it tuned.
Yeah,
If you realize it, right? Like if you're a technician out there and you're not offering piano cleaning, you're missing out.
yeah, that's true.
Because we kind of like foolishly just think all they care about is what our primary service of tuning pianos. And I feel like some people would almost rather just have it cleaned than have to and ignore it. Yeah.
And you get the the calls where someone calls you to tune it, and really the tuning wasn't bothering them. It was the one sticky key.
The one sticky key. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
being able to kind of read between the lines and yeah, the tuning is not always the most important thing, for sure.
No, absolutely. Um, well, we're gonna be wrapping up here in maybe like 5 or 10 minutes, so we'll start to wind down. But um, how can we, I think you already did some outreach, right? Like you said on Facebook, and you inquired to people, hey, what do you want next with the Grandwork stuff, and how else can we help you, as a community, in terms of helping make sure that your businesses are a success, and you're able to steward the Grandworks name as well as all the other stuff that you're doing into existence. Any requests or
I would love to hear from as many people as possible. And um, it would be, not just, yeah, I hope to buy your stuff, but um, like, here's what I see as valuable. Here's what I see as lacking. Um, Here are the barriers. Um, or, yes, it's great, but the way that I practice as a piano technician, I'm doing fine without it. Or I would love all manner of feedback. What's great? What are the barriers? Um, what are, long-term plans that, uh, if I'm, around for 10 years, that regulating rack I was talking about, my vision of it is that really anyone who's doing regulations, grand piano regulations, one of these should be in their possession. And um, I would love to know just like what the trajectory towards that is. Uh, if you disagree with me, why? So,
hmm? Well, I like it. I mean, I like the approach of, I think what's a what's a price point on a like, your sort of entry level Grandwork system?
the starter system is, I think, a mid 2000s,
Okay.
and um, and going up to about tw in mid 12,000s.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, especially because I don't think the prices have changed due to inflation much over the past several years. It's not terribly unaffordable to get yourself into the basics of the Grandworks, brand. And at the same time, you've got the new technicians that they see anything, that costs more than $100, and they're like, do I need that or whatever? So, maybe there's some lower price point entry level. Yeah, that's an actual sort of marketing technique or sort of habit of sales or whatever even than people mention is you have somebody buy something at a lower price point, then they like it, then they buy something a little higher price point, they like it, and then they buy some, they kind
Mhm.
of walk up to call it like a value ladder. There could be a little bit of room there for that in the Grandworks, giving people that value of the regulation assistance and help and the actual product, what's valuable
Yeah.
about it, and then walking them up.
And it's priced to not punish you for slowly building a system.
Hmm.
Um,
Maybe a subscription model where you sign up, pay just like a monthly, but you get your little modules, as things go. Maybe you get a little class, part of that or something. Be cool.
yeah, I mean, if and what would really be useful would be someone who's potentially interested in buying it that way, letting me know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You just experiment, right? If somebody wants to try it out, sure,
Because
let's try it. Yeah,
as a business this small, we have lots of flexibility, and that feedback um, in very real ways can make a difference.
absolutely. So for only 19.99 a month, 19.99 a month, you too can get yourself a GrandWorks regulation system. So call now. The number is on the screen. You get the idea. No, but that's not, if somebody wants to try it out, that does sound very achievable, and look, you're open to it. So I bet you there's people out there that they would see or hear this and be like, that sounds like a great idea, but they're not gonna call. Come on, just reach out. Um, well, wonderful. It's been great to talk to you today. We're going to have to wrap up here. Any other final thoughts or words that you want to share before we do our outro?
Not necessarily, just a thanks to you. It was a pleasure to be here and really enjoy what you're doing.
Wonderful. Yeah, it was great to have you here. I'll walk us out with our typical outro. We have reached the end of another journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. And again, thanks to Ben for joining us today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction for piano industry masters without leaving your home. For those of you that join us today by signing up for this session individually, you can make your life more convenient. You can subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour just $16 a month. You get recording of today's session in our member area, automatic registration for each week's new session. Sign up at bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. And then, of course, don't forget about the podcast, the Substack blog, the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and check out our email list if you go to the website, pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Ben, if you want to just jump right back on the link real quick, we'll do a quick wrap up. But other than that, everybody, we'll see you later. And